Imagine a world where silence was permanent for some people, a world where sound existed but could not be shared, a world where a voice, once spoken, vanished forever into the air. This was the world into which Alexander Graham Bell was born. Before telephones, before microphones, before radios, podcasts, voice messages, or video calls, a world where human connection depended entirely on distance. And strangely enough, the story of the man who would one day allow voices to travel across continents begins with silence. Alexander Graham Bell was born on March 3, 1847, in Edinburgh, Scotland, a city known for science and philosophy. But his destiny was shaped by people. His mother, Eliza Grace Simons Bell, was nearly deaf, and that single fact would quietly guide Alexander's entire life. As a child, Bell learned something most people never think about. Sound is fragile. It can be lost. It can fade. And for millions, it never arrives at all. His father, Melville Bell, invented visible speech, a system of written symbols representing how sounds are produced by the mouth. Young Alexander watched this every day. By the age of 12, Bell built his first mechanical invention. It wasn't a weapon or a toy, but a simple machine to help a local miller. He was chasing solutions. But tragedy struck. Both of his brothers died of tuberculosis. In 1870, the Bells left Scotland. They emigrated to Canada, settling in Brantford, Ontario. It was a reset. Bell became a teacher of the deaf. He never set out to invent a telephone. He set out to help people hear and speak. Sound, he believed, was not magic. It was movement. Bell believed sound could be captured and transmitted. Most people saw electricity as light or shock. Bell saw a carrier, a way to move vibrations from one place to another. Telegraphs sent symbols, not sound. Bell asked, if electricity can carry a signal, why can't it carry a voice? Engineers said it was impossible. Bell disagreed. A voice was nothing more than patterns of vibration, and patterns can be copied. Ahead of him lay electricity, sound, and an idea that would change the world forever. Bell's future depended on proving his idea was not a dream. Then, on March 10, 1876, something extraordinary happened. Bell accidentally spilled acid on himself and shouted, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you." The words traveled through the wire, not as code, not as clicks, but as clear human speech. Watson heard him. He heard him. Watson rushes into the room. Silence, then realization. In that moment, history changed. The first successful telephone transmission had occurred. Bell didn't celebrate. He went silent. Bell understood something terrifying. The world would never be the same again. In the next part, we will see the race against rivals and the controversy that followed. When Alexander Graham Bell spoke those first words through a wire, he didn't just invent a device. He ignited a race. Word spread quickly, too quickly. In the world of invention, ideas were currency, and patents were weapons. Bell knew this. So before the world could truly understand what he had built, he rushed to protect it. On March 7, 1876, Bell was granted U.S. patent number 174,465. It described something revolutionary, a method for transmitting vocal sounds by causing electrical currents to vary in intensity. In simple terms, electricity would copy the shape of a voice. This patent would become one of the most valuable in human history. and also one of the most contested. Almost immediately, rivals appeared. The most famous among them, Elisha Gray. Gray had filed a similar idea on the same day. The difference? Bell arrived first. By hours. Those hours changed everything. For years, lawsuits followed. Dozens of legal challenges tried to overturn Bell's claim. They argued that Bell stole ideas, that the telephone wasn't truly his, that others deserved credit. Bell stood firm, and in the end, the courts agreed with him. Again and again, the patent held. But while lawyers argued, the world listened. In the next part, we will see the miracle in Philadelphia and the emperor who was shocked by a talking machine. In 1876, Bell presented his invention at the Philadelphia Centennial Exhibition. At first, people ignored it, until someone important arrived. When Emperor Dom Pedro II of Brazil heard a voice come through the device, he reportedly exclaimed, "My God, it talks." That moment changed public perception forever. Suddenly, the telephone was not a curiosity. It was a miracle. Newspapers exploded with stories. Crowds gathered to witness demonstrations. Bell became famous almost overnight. But Bell was uncomfortable with fame. He was not a showman. He was a thinker. While investors dreamed of profits, Bell dreamed of possibilities. In 1877, the Bell Telephone Company was formed, the foundation of what would one day become a global communications empire. At first, telephones were rare, expensive, seen as toys for the wealthy. But slowly, wires spread, from building to building, from city to city. And something extraordinary happened. People began to expect instant communication. Society started changing its rhythm. Bell watched all of this carefully, but his interests were drifting again. For Bell, the telephone was never the final goal. It was proof, and that led him back to his first love, helping those who lived in silence. He began experimenting with speech amplification and light-based communication. As the world connected by wires, Bell turned his attention to the future, to wireless ideas, to sound traveling through air, water, and space. In the next part, we will explore Bell's lesser-known inventions and the bold ideas that pushed him far ahead of his time. See you in part 4. After the telephone changed the world, most people expected Alexander Graham Bell to stop, to settle down, to enjoy wealth and recognition. But Bell never slowed down. In fact, this was when his mind became more dangerous than ever. Bell believed something deeply, that the telephone was not his greatest achievement. It was only evidence that sound could be controlled. Bell began asking new questions. What if sound could be recorded, not just transmitted? These questions pulled him far beyond telephones. One of Bell's earliest post-telephone inventions was the graphophone. At the time, Thomas Edison had already created the phonograph, but Bell saw flaws. The sound quality was poor. Bell believed sound deserved better. Instead of engraving sound onto hard metal, Bell used wax-coated cylinders. Wax was softer. It captured vibrations more accurately, and it could be reused. The graphophone helped shape the future of audio storage, influencing everything from vinyl records to magnetic tape to modern digital audio. But Bell's interest kept expanding. Soon, sound was no longer enough. He turned his attention to light. Bell began experimenting with a device he called the photophone. It was radical. Instead of sending sound through wires, he sent it through light. A mirror vibrated with the speaker's voice. Sunlight reflected off that mirror. On the other end, a receiver converted those light changes back into sound. Bell had invented wireless communication using sunlight. Bell himself said the photophone was more important than the telephone. History disagreed. The world wasn't ready, but the idea survived. Decades later, it returned as fiber optic communication, the backbone of the modern internet. Bell was no longer inventing for his time. He was inventing for the future. And still, his original motivation never disappeared. The deaf. Bell spent enormous energy developing tools for the hearing impaired. He worked on early hearing aids. But here, history becomes complicated. Bell believed strongly in Oralism. Many disagreed. Some felt this erased deaf culture. Bell's intentions were compassionate, but not always correct. This contradiction defines him, a man who gave voice to the world, yet struggled to fully understand silence. As the years passed, Bell continued inventing metal detectors, hydrofoils, early aviation experiments. His curiosity had no borders. Bell watches a strange, experimental boat skim across water. In the next part, we will explore Bell's obsession with flight, speed, and the desire to defy gravity. See you in Part 5. As Alexander Graham Bell grew older, most inventors would have slowed down. He did the opposite. Bell became obsessed with speed, and more importantly, with flight. He had already conquered sound. Now, he wanted to challenge gravity itself. Bell believed flight was not magic. Just like sound, he believed flight was a problem of structure and force. At the time, airplanes were unstable fantasies. But Bell approached the problem differently. Instead of building one large wing, he asked, what if flight could be built from many small wings? Bell began experimenting with tetrahedral kites, thousands of small triangular cells linked together into massive structures. Small wings are stable. Many together become powerful. These kites were enormous. Some were large enough to lift a human. Others carried instruments. They danced violently in the wind, but they stayed airborne. Bell wasn't chasing spectacle. He was gathering data. He studied how air moved, how structures flexed, how stability could be engineered. In the next part, we will see the Silver Dart's historic flight and Bell's speed record on water. In 1907, Bell formed the Aerial Experiment Association, a small group of brilliant minds. Their mission, to achieve controlled, powered flight. Within this group, progress exploded. One of their aircraft, the Silver Dart, made the first powered flight in Canada. It wasn't fast, but it flew. Bell watched quietly. He observed. Flight, like sound, was no longer a dream. It was solved. Bell turned his attention to hydrofoils, boats that could rise above the water on underwater wings, reducing drag, increasing speed. At high speed, fins create lift. Only the fins touch the water. Less resistance. In 1919, one of his hydrofoil designs set a world water speed record, a record that stood for years. By now, Bell was no longer just an inventor. He was a force, touching sound, light, flight, water. But time was catching up. Bell was aging. His energy remained fierce, but his body was slowing. And as his experiments slowed, his thoughts turned inward, toward legacy, toward impact, toward the question he had chased his entire life. What does it truly mean to connect humanity? In the next part, we will explore Bell's final years, his philosophy, and his fears. See you in Part 6. By the early 1900s, Alexander Graham Bell was no longer chasing the future. The future was chasing him. The world around Bell was changing at a terrifying pace. Telephones were everywhere now. Cities were louder, faster, more crowded. Voices traveled instantly across continents. And Bell watched it all with mixed emotions. This was the paradox of Bell's life. He had given humanity connection, but connection had made the world restless. He valued clarity, thoughtfulness, meaning, and he began to worry. He worried that technology was moving faster than wisdom, that invention was outrunning understanding, that humanity might forget how powerful its own creations could be. Bell writing slowly in a notebook. His hand pauses often, as if weighing every word. During these years, Bell shifted his focus away from invention and toward reflection. He served as president of the National Geographic Society, helping transform it into a serious scientific voice. Under Bell's influence, science became visual, accessible, story-driven. People need stories. But Bell's legacy was not free of controversy. Many began to criticize Bell's stance on oralism. They felt this erased deaf culture. Bell listened, but he never fully changed his view. This tension followed him to the end. As his health declined, Bell spent more time at his beloved home in Nova Scotia. Near water, near wind, near quiet. He knew his time was limited, and strangely, he was at peace with that. Bell once said that the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. And now, near the end, he felt he had learned enough. In the next part, we will witness Bell's final days. In the summer of 1922, Alexander Graham Bell was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix, the kind that comes after a lifetime of changing the world. Bell was 75 years old. His mind was still sharp, but his body was failing him. Breathing was difficult, movement was slow, and yet his thoughts remained calm. He was not afraid. Silence had been his companion since childhood. In his final days, Bell was surrounded by family. Most importantly, by Mabel, his wife. She sat beside him, communicating the way they always had, with touch, with eye contact, with understanding beyond sound. On August 2nd, 1922, Alexander Graham Bell passed away quietly. No machines, no noise, just breath, and then stillness. But what happened next was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Within hours, the news spread. Alexander Graham Bell was dead, and the world responded with silence. Across North America, telephone operators did something extraordinary. They stopped. For one full minute, every telephone line fell quiet. No calls, no voices, no signals. An entire continent paused to honor the man who gave it sound. It was the greatest tribute imaginable. Not applause, silence. In that moment, the world finally understood what Bell had created. Connection, not wires, not devices, but the ability to reach another human being across distance. Bell was buried simply. No grand monument, no excess, just a man returning to the earth. But his voice never truly disappeared. Every phone call, every whisper traced back to one idea. That sound could travel. After Alexander Graham Bell's death, the world did not slow down. It accelerated. The telephone escaped laboratories and entered everyday life. Homes, shops, factories, governments. Humanity had crossed a threshold. For the first time in history, distance began to lose meaning. You no longer had to travel to be present. Your voice could arrive before your body. This changed everything. Business transformed first. Orders were placed instantly. Decisions were made faster. Markets expanded beyond local borders. Time became money in a way it never had before. Culture followed. Conversations became shorter. Language adapted. Greetings changed. People began to expect immediate responses. Silence became uncomfortable. Bell had once feared this. He wondered what constant connection would do to the human mind. In the next part, we will see how communication became infrastructure and how it reshaped our psychology. Governments quickly understood the power of the telephone. Military coordination improved. Emergency response transformed. Communication became infrastructure. Wars were fought faster. Information spread uncontrollably. But Bell's influence went deeper. It reshaped human psychology. Before the telephone, waiting was normal. After it, waiting felt like failure. Human patience shortened. The world felt smaller, yet louder. The telephone reshaped relationships. Love letters became calls. Arguments happened in real time. Emotion traveled instantly, sometimes too fast. Misunderstanding could spread just as quickly. And still, the telephone kept evolving. Rotary dials, switchboards, long-distance lines. Each improvement pushed Bell's original idea further. Soon, sound would become data. Wires would disappear. Bell never saw the internet. But the internet is his descendant. Every message sent today, text, voice, video, is an echo of his first experiment. One man asked, "What if sound could travel?" And humanity answered, "What if everything could?" Every great invention leaves shadows, and Alexander Graham Bell's legacy is no exception. As the telephone reshaped the world, questions began to surface, not about what Bell built, but about what it cost. The most serious criticism centered on Bell's views about deaf education. Bell believed strongly that deaf individuals should learn to speak and read lips. He feared that sign language would isolate them, that silence would separate them from society. But many in the deaf community disagreed, fiercely. They argued that sign language was not a limitation. It was a culture, an identity, a complete and meaningful way to exist. To them, Bell's vision felt controlling, even harmful. Bell never saw himself as an oppressor. He believed he was helping, but intention does not erase impact. And history remembers both. In the next part, we will see the debate over the telephone's true inventor and the new shadows of privacy and technology. Was he truly the sole inventor? Dozens of inventors worked on similar ideas. Gray, Musi, others. Invention is not just brilliance. It is access, resources, and opportunity. Bell won the patent wars, but debates continue. Then there is the question of surveillance. Bell's invention made communication easier, but also easier to monitor. Privacy became fragile. Bell never intended this. But technology rarely stays neutral. Bell never pursued power. He didn't chase control. He chased understanding. He reinvested his wealth into science, into education, into exploration, not dominance. Can a person change the world for the better and still be wrong? The answer is uncomfortable. Yes, progress is rarely pure. It is shaped by human limits, by blind spots, by the era in which it is born. Bell's legacy is not a statue. It is a conversation, one we are still having. Every time we build something new, we inherit the same responsibility. To ask not only can we, but should we? See you in part 10. Every invention begins as a question. Alexander Graham Bell's question was simple. What if sound could travel? He did not ask how to become famous. He asked how to connect. Bell's life was shaped by silence. A mother who could not hear. A world where voices disappeared the moment they were spoken. From that silence, he imagined something impossible. And then he built it. The telephone was not just a device. It was a turning point. Before it, distance defined relationships. After it, distance became optional. Families stayed closer. Businesses grew faster. Governments moved quicker. And the human voice became permanent. Families stayed closer. Businesses grew faster. Every smartphone, every voice message, they are all echoes of that first experiment. One man asked, "What if sound could travel?" But Bell's story was never simple. He was brilliant and flawed, visionary and limited by his time. A man who gave the world sound, yet struggled to understand silence as a culture. This is what makes his story human. Bell did not invent the modern world alone, but without him, it would sound very different. Every smartphone, every podcast, they are all echoes of a man leaning toward a crude device and saying, "Mr. Watson, come here." Bell once feared that technology might move faster than wisdom. That connection might replace understanding. And today, that question still hangs in the air. Technology can connect us instantly, but connection is not the same as meaning. Bell's true legacy is not the telephone. It is the responsibility he left behind, to use our inventions wisely, to remember the humans behind the signals. Because the greatest technology is not the one that speaks the loudest. It is the one that helps us listen.